7.
Not voting.
Our motion, approving the motion on the minutes. Do we accept them as approved? Second. Support. We come now to the time for the public commentary. Should we vote on this? Okay. Vote on these minutes? Yeah, to accept. Okay. All in favor, say aye. One question before we start. Anybody from the grand jury?
Who's the media? Who's the media?
What news media do we have?
More leader.
Let's go ahead and have the public commentary.
I'm Maria Jones. If you don't mind, I'd like to sit down and then we'll get to that later. I'm here to simply relate to you a real-life story of the last 3 years of my life. I am going to follow notes. I'm still suffering from problems with memory, and I think it will be to your benefit that I do follow notes. It's not easy to talk about, but I do feel it's necessary. I'm not a radical nor an extremist.
Thanks, we're going to have a hard time taking you up.
I can speak loud.
Can you want to move your chair? Want to move to that chair?
Oh, I
Thank you.
I think she'll identify herself before she comes to us.
Members of the board, I am Rebecca Lee. I'm from Lemoore. I'm here simply to relate to you a real-life story of the last 3 years of my life. As I said, it's not easy to talk about, but it is necessary. As I also said, I'm not radical, I'm not extremist, I'm not a hypochondriac. I'm not against farming or the safe use of harmless chemicals. I'm a devoted, logically thinking teacher of science and the teaching of the environment to 7th and 8th graders. I've taught in this county for 21 years. My husband was raised on a farm here, and people like his folks are the backbone of America. I've lived here in the San Joaquin Valley all of my life. My parents lived here, my grandparents lived here, my great-grandparents lived here, and my great-great-grandparents who were farmers in the Bakersfield area lived here. Now I'm told that I should move from the valley that I love because of the vast amounts of chemicals in the air and in the water, in the earth. My husband's roots are here. My roots are here. My question to you is, why must I move? Who has given the right? Who has been given the right to poison our surroundings from poison you? I've passed out some medical records. And I'd like to go over those with you. These are from July and October of 1986. You're welcome to look onto my card. These are from the Environmental Health Clinic of Dallas, Texas, in their laboratories. On the first page, it indicates the total complement. This is relating to the 16 components that make up the complement system of the immune system that are measurable now. You'll look at the second column. It says normal or for interpretation. There's nothing there. Under abnormal results, you'll see a listing of 50% low. That means I've lost 50% of my immune system. Go to the second page, and there's a breakdown of some of those components. You can see the WBC at 6,200, total length at 1364, lymphocytes at 22%, just barely on the chart. T lymphocytes at 65%, total T 887, which is drastically low. Helper inducers T4s 40%, total 546, which is off below the chart. Suppressor cytoxin 20%, low NPM, total 273, completely below the chart. The T4 T8 ratio is 2.1. B lymphocytes 7%, again low end. Total B 95%. I'm sorry, 95. The third page indicates the general volatile screening test. There I have 12 volatiles that have been found in my blood, 2 of which, dichloromethane and tetrachloroethylene, are at a highly significant level. Notice down at the very bottom of the page, it says important, any level other than 0 is abnormal. You notice I have a reading on all 12 of the volatiles, but most of them are at below a 0.3. Anything at 0 is, anything above 0 is abnormal. The 2 that I mentioned at 0.4 and 0.3 are significant. Go to the next page, and this is the chlorinated pesticide screening test. There are 19 on the chlorinated pesticide screening test. I show levels at all 19. Only 4, though, that are highly significant. Dieldrin, DDE, trans-monochlor, and HCB. The DDE is at 24.7. Remember, anything above 0 is significant. The final page is are the results from 1027 testing. If you want to compare that with the second page, I have lost additionally on the WBC, it's down to 43, which is 4,300, which is below the scale. Total lymph 1419. Lymphocytes 33%. T lymphocytes are a little bit better, gained 3% there with a total T of 965, so I'm improving there. Helper inducer 40%, same as it was prior. Suppressor cytotoxic 26%, so it's up. T4 to T8 ratio is now 1.5, which I've lost 0.5, which is significant. B lymphocytes are now 11%, which is helpful. At the time of the testing, I had gained approximately 10% of my immune system back that I had lost, which was wonderful. Since these tests came back, the pesticide tests also come back. I don't have the written form for that yet, but unfortunately, DDT is also picked up in this testing. The reason for that could be one of 3 reasons. I was warned that might happen because I did lose weight, and apparently many of the pesticides are locked into the fat cells. Now, when I lost weight, that may have been released back into the bloodstream where it was picked up on testing. The other reason could be that I am forced to be on a 4-day rotation diet with lots of fresh vegetables and fruits and meats. Everything must be cooked from scratch. I have no packaged or canned materials at all. From this, we import many things from other countries, and some of them use DDT. Now, I may have picked it up there. The third possibility would be the illegal use of DDT in this country. And I have no way of knowing which of those 3 possibilities would be the answer. Dr. Ray of the Environmental Health Clinic in Dallas, who is world-renowned, and I'm very, very lucky to have him as my doctor, indicated that I had the highest pesticide level that he had ever seen other than people from mainland or China. And that my life is at risk now. The doctor felt this buildup of chemicals had been accomplished over a period of many years, that one massive dose put me over the edge and the immune system was devastated, leaving me with only 50% of the normal system, as you can see on page 1. No illnesses. I had no illnesses for a year and a half prior to the following incident that I would like to tell you about. October of 1983, I was returning home from work. I was traveling east on 198 from the Lemoore Naval Air Station where I'm a teacher. Spray plane was spraying a field adjacent to the freeway. As I passed by and passed over the freeway, he did not cut his spray off. Being the typical optimist, I thought, oh, that's terrible, but oh, I'll be okay. I went home. I experienced a little bit of nausea, running nose, things like that, but dismissed it. Within 2 weeks, I had a serious eye infection. Went to my doctor. He sent me to an eye doctor. I was given medication there that I reacted to. They put me on another medication, and they then took several weeks for that to almost clear. Before that had cleared, it traveled to the other eye, where I went through the same process. By mid-January, I came down with the flu, and over the next several weeks, I had 5 to 6 relapses. From that point, I was hospitalized with respiratory problems. My lungs were a disaster. My electrolyte count was nearly non-existent. I was put on intravenous fluids, antibiotics, steroids, prednisone. There was an indication of lupus, and the white count was about 1/2 of normal. I had face and brain swelling, joint, tendons, ligament swelling and pain, loss of memory, fuzzy-headed, extreme fatigue, burning of the eyes, loss of appetite, and nausea. They came to the point in the hospital threatening to force feed me because I did not keep food down. In May, I was then sent home, did not recover. I was sent to Sansom Clinic in May for further testing. They put me on a 2-year lupus watch there. I had no apparent allergies. I did have an opaque sinus, and we were then punched in and removed material. I was put on antibiotics, antihistamines, and pain medication. In September, I had to have sinus surgery because I was no better. They broke my nose and found one sinus completely filled with infected cysts. I was continued on antibiotics, antihistamines, and pain medications, and was having a very difficult time through the winter of 1984 and 85 trying to recover. There was actual worsening of my symptoms. I did a lot of research on lupus and tried to understand my body's problems since I thought that that's what it was, and I was trying to fight that. February 1985, I read an article on Dr. William J. Ray of the Environmental Health Clinic in Dallas, Texas, describing the toxic effects of chemicals on the body. To my shock, as I read that article, the symptoms were just like mine. I agonized over the cost, if it would help, if I could be helped, as I was very ill at that time. I could hardly move at times. I became very quiet because of difficulty to get improper brain function. It took 9 hours to fill out the admission forms on the health history, but I did that, and I entered the clinic in July of 1986. After intensive testing over several weeks, the tests that you have in front of you, among others, were the result. I was told that I was extremely ill and it would take at least a year for my recovery, if indeed recovery was possible. I'm now on immunotherapy, and I was improving in August, and I returned to teaching. It was tough, and I saw real improvement by the end of September. I was tested, though, in October in Dallas, and I had gained in the areas as I indicated to you from the test. I was down in the white count, though. Dr. Ray was amazed and pleased at that time that I had been able to respond to the therapy. I had not cheated, though. I was that man's best patient. When I returned from Dallas, I started feeling poorly again. This was during the spring season. I continued with sinus infections in November. In December, I came down with the flu. I was in bed for 3.5 weeks and had to go into the hospital for respiratory therapy. It took 2.5 more weeks for semi-recovery. I'm still striving to be free of some of the return of the symptoms of swelling and pain and the fuzziness in the brain, and this is why I am using my notes. I apologize. Usually I don't have to do things like that. The actual diagnosis from the doctor is cephalogia, vascular dermatitis, myalgia, toxic brain syndrome, arthalgia, chemical sensitivity, rhinosinusitis, and vasculitis. Not a very nice combination. I cannot get better as long as I have repeated infections. With only 50% of my immune system, the doctors have told me that I can die from infections that I may contract. My life has been my teaching and my family, but now I can find I can no longer work at school and very little at home. Rather, I must dedicate my life fighting daily to survive and try to eliminate the stress on my immune system so it can rebuild itself. But I am fighting, and I'm determined that I will recover my health so that I can return to my normal life. Now, this is the enemy that is so difficult to see. The pesticides break down the mucous membrane, allowing infections to set in. And then, coupled with a foreign substance, the body's immune system breaks down. In science, when looking for answers, you look for trends, and you add bits and pieces together, and then over a period of time you can come up with an educated guess as to a cause for an effect. Then you start testing for validity. My case history is merely the tip of the iceberg. I dare to speculate that if a massive case study of the effects of pesticides on people in this valley, where over 60% of all pesticides and herbicides manufactured in the United States are used, and actually test the blood content for these chemicals, if this was completed, the result, I'm afraid, would be shocking to all. Before you, you have the evidence of the effects in black and white on my life, and yes, I've described to you some of my suffering, and I know the chemical companies do a great deal of testing, and I admire them for that. And there are many government regulations. But there are vast data gaps on the long-term effects of many of the chemicals, and on both the environment and on the people that inhabit that environment. Some problems show up right away, some take years. The body is so delicately balanced that even a change of the use of sugar in the body, as you know, can have disastrous effects. Many chemicals used around us are not easily dealt with by our bodies. Of those listed that I showed you, any value, remember over zero, has a toxic effect upon the body. You have a chance to make a difference with this committee. You don't want your families harmed any more than I do. I'm quite sure of that. More farmers are awakened to the harmful side of chemicals generally because of health problems within their own families. Undoubtedly, the long-term answer to the farmer's dilemma will be the genetic engineering plants that they're working on now, so that the use of chemicals will lessen. And farmers in the future, I'm sure, will not have to deal with this problem. History may look back at only a 60 to 80 year period of chemicals used in a significant amount as compared to the eons of Earth time. But the possible contamination of our soil and air and water and the entrance of these chemicals into our food chain may have effects that last for centuries, affecting artisans and their world in potentially devastating ways. Really, how can responsible people allow that? Certainly concern about future effects of chemicals in our environment should be present in all of us, but for the sake of our present citizens, we must be concerned with the now. I know of no place that has been polluted or contaminated that eagerly wanted to admit the problem. But a few voices forced the problems to surface so that solutions could be worked on. We are in an aware and enlightened era. The people of California as a group voiced their concern about environmental pollution at the last election. I encourage you as an investigative committee. The problem is here. Let's work together toward a true solution so that we may all live long, normal, productive lives. I thank you for your time. Also, here's a letter from Dr. Ray indicating my condition. Do you have any questions? I'll be happy to answer.
We still have 8 minutes. public comment period, so I want to leave the time open so we can have some comments.
I'll make brief comments.
Okay.
I'm here in response to, my name is Jim Martin, I'm from Lemoore. In response to some recent writings in the paper, I'd like to read you some of the things. Number one, it says this committee was formed in response to 3 Lemoore women's complaints. Okay, later on in the same article, one of our supervisors quoted as saying, this committee was formed strictly because of those people, just to keep those 3 Lemoore women happy. Well, this committee was formed by 1,600 and some odd signatures of the people of Kings County. Okay, out of the 1,600 signatures, probably 1,700 people were polled. Okay, that represents a vast majority of Kings County. Listening to the news the other night, they came on with a study of 1,600 people, a survey. They determined how the country felt about the president's involvement in the Iran-Contra connection. 1,600 people in Kings County say they want this studied and studied thoroughly. Thank you.
I'd like to mention, I've had a lot of problems with the newspaper articles too. You know, it seems like what goes on here isn't totally reflected in the newspapers, so I can sympathize with it.
The one thing that I feel, and I was in on the original meeting, and the one thing that I feel is important is that our farmers are not obeying the laws that are on the books. When we left this first meeting, we went in on Lacey, 18 into Lemoore, and there was a plane spraying right across the street from residences. And that is not legal on the books today. And I feel that our farmers have to start obeying the laws that are on the books, and then we would not have quite so many problems with our school children and with our residents in these small towns. I'm Dorothy Bridges from Lemoore.
State your name.
My name is Joyce Doyle, and I am a citizen of Lemoore. I have been here a year in May. When I first moved here, I was surprised by people telling me, well, just wait till they start spraying, you'll feel sick. I thought this was a joke. I have lived in states of New York, New Mexico, and Southern California. This is the modern age. This doesn't happen. Well, we lived in the country on 18th Avenue. I was out working in my yard around the 18th of October. I felt terrible burning as I was working in my yard, entering my nose, going into my sinuses, and through my throat. And I've never experienced tear gas, but I told my husband this is what I thought it was. That same afternoon, went to the Fresno Fair with some friends. I started to get the shivers. My temperature was 103. They took me to the emergency where they rushed me to the hospital, found I had severe lung infection. 2 days later, I was admitted to the hospital, where I stayed there for 8 days. They told me my lungs were in severe state, that I looked like I had emphysema and severe sinus infection. I have not been able to go back to work, and it was January, and I'm still finally working to get over it. I want to express what my husband said. He grew up in Pennsylvania, around the coal mine, and he said to me, Joyce, you people who have had this problem may be a gift to farmers. Maybe you are like the canaries that the miners use. That they take these canaries into the mines. When the canary dies, the miners know to get out because there is gas, poisonous gas leaking into the mines. Maybe we are your canaries, and maybe you can take this warning. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could respond to that. Believe me, farmers don't want anybody to be a canary. That is not our role in life, to have other people die around us. You know, we've got respiratory problems. Hopefully, you know, in life in general, people won't die to prove a point like this. So I would hope that, you know, your situation improves, and I would hope that you don't look at us quite in that same light.
I have no animosity toward farmers. In fact, I see that this may be a very positive thing. There are ways we can turn this around. Maybe we here in San Joaquin Valley and in Kearns County would be pioneers. Maybe you as farmers would have to find a better way. And that way, the rest of us, I mean, maybe it's just it's like a guideline for you, a warning. I saw, when I was in the hospital, I saw every night many children brought into the emergency room suffering with breathing problems, kidney failure, and I can't say it's been strained, but why all of a sudden, why something? You know, you have questions, and we need answers, but we should all work together. We all live here, and we all can work in a positive way. There might be some answers we can find. This is a modern age, and we try we can find answers. I know.
Any more comments?
My name is Beth Nettleton, and I used to live in Hong Kong, and now I live in Visalia. When I moved here 7 years ago from San Diego, I thought it would be a healthy place to live. And I lived out in the country surrounded by cotton fields, and I didn't know anything about it, and I saw a plane fly around, but I didn't think about it. And I got severely sick all of a sudden at the time they were spraying petroleum. And I went to the Naval Hospital, and they were very few beds, and they were over, they had too many patients, but they immediately admitted me because they said I was extremely ill. And they sent my blood off to Atlanta, and they had no idea what was wrong with me, except that I had severe lung problems, high fever, and I was just extremely fatigued. And they started talking to me about what was going on in my life, and they got the results back of the blood, and they couldn't figure anything out except that maybe, since where I live, they sprayed the cotton fields, that I had some kind of allergic reaction to that. So they said, next time, keep your windows closed in your house and in your cars. And so the next year, I tried to be much more careful. Instead of leaving the windows open when planes went over, I closed them. And I still got sick, but not as severely. And one day I was driving to Visalia, and my car got sprayed completely by a plane going over. And that upset me because, I felt like I had no control over that. So I called some agencies in town, and they said, there's nothing you can do about it. Have you ever done studies to find out what kind of health problems have happened with these pesticides? Why aren't they doing it in trucks, going to the fields? Why are they spraying from planes that just goes everywhere? And they said, well, this is an ag community, they're barking up the wrong trees, there's nothing to be done. And I was just told pretty much to be quiet and give up on hope of it. Well, I had a 5-year-old son that started at YMCA daycare, and there was a little boy with a horrible rash, and he grew up on a cotton farm. And she said it happens every year when they spray the defoliants, the little boy breaks out this horrible rash. But it's their livelihood, and she felt that and couldn't do anything about it. I started work at the high school. I started meeting more and more people in the community. More and more people are saying over and over again, sore throats, extreme fatigue, headaches, every time that cotton fields are sprayed with petroleum. So one year I wasn't sick, was the year of the tick program. They didn't grow any cotton up where I lived, and I was healthy as could be. And I just think that you can't keep pushing this under the rug anymore. There's too many people coming down with the same things time and time again. The Navy doctors who are not from here will tell you that the minute they get orders to a more Navy air station, they know what kind of problems they're going to be seeing. Over and over again, people with skin rashes, headaches, fatigue, lung problems, respiratory. And they will admit to you that it's something to do with these pesticides. A doctor that lives here, he's got his connections with the ag, he's going to be a little bit maybe more temperate in trying to admit it. The doctors that don't have anything to lose will be very honest with you. And I think that farmers, nobody wants to get mad at farmers, and where would we be without farmers? But farmers have to say, don't take it personally. Let's see what we can do. Why can't you spray from the trucks going to the fields? And I really admire everybody here, and I really admire you for speaking so well and letting us know that you problems. And you're not alone.
Okay, the time for a little commentary is over. I'd like to thank you for your input. I think you can see how viable it is to have input from the community. And I'd like to see this continue on our regular meetings. Because we only can do as much as we know what's going on out there. This kind of input's very valuable. Okay, at this time, I'll turn the meeting over to Mallory.
Okay, the family board member, you just need to turn the lights on.
Thank you once again. For the next 20 minutes, then I will leave the floor open to people who want to discuss it. Next 20 minutes. is the floor
Okay.
open.
Well, the first part of the letter, I find it a little hard to follow. I know he's making reference to the waivers that need to be signed by residents if they, I guess, are considered a cluster in the county. Is that right? Okay, but, you know, I mean, this really doesn't make too much sense. The information I was given from the Ag Commissioner's office from Mr. Costa, one of the inspectors, he stated that I can go through what this actually should be saying. The grower must obtain a permit from the Department of Agriculture to purchase and restricted chemicals. He has already determined what pesticide to use by first consulting the pest control advisor, who is a chemical company representative. Step 2 is a 24-hour notice of intent is filed with the Department of Agriculture. And where he has here B, this paragraph really pertains to this. The Agricultural Commissioner must approve or disapprove. A visual inspection is made in 5% of the cases. At this point, the Commissioner determines if a cluster of residents exists. A cluster is defined as 3 houses in a row. If the inspector determines that a cluster does exist, and he states here that, you know, the homeowner or the renter should talk to the Ag Department, but the grower must obtain the waiver from the residents for using the full and okay, so that actually really doesn't make too much sense on the report.
Cluster is part of the relating to the public stuff. You don't want to confuse that at all. The policy related to public issue. Restricted materials, depth, products, paragraph related to but you're correct that there was a misunderstanding in the part A or the first part of the findings.
Excuse me, what was the misunderstanding?
Their findings is not consistent with their policy. I feel that I should address this to the grand jury since it's a recommendation to that. Other than that, I'll make a comment relating to their report here, their investigation. But she is correct, Valerie is correct, means that homeowners do not request waivers.
Yeah, this part didn't make any sense to me either.
Okay, here what they're relating to there is not to the Ag Commissioner regulations, to the FAA regulations. If there's a cluster of homes, we do go to the homes to get permission to fly.
Okay.
See, what they're leading to there in the report is, they're exactly right, but they're not pertaining to the Ag Commission, they're pertaining to the FAA's regulations.
But that's not spelled out here.
Yeah, they didn't say
Spelled
FAA,
out
they
in
should have put in
the
there FAA, yeah, they should have put in there FAA regulations.
Okay, if that was changed, then in your feeling it would be correct.
Yeah, it's what they've got that is correct, they should have put an FAA on it.
I would like to comment on the GRIP study. According to the determination of airborne residues from foreign harvest aid chemicals, Dapholex, Cacrodolates, and Paraquat, as treated San Joaquin Valley hot fields, which took place in Kings County. As a measure of potential human exposure, UC Davis 1983. It states that the field study primarily involved monitoring atmospheric residues from commercial air applications. The illness and nuisance reports associated with DEF and NERPOS and their use are consistent with the drift of noxious odors as vapors away from the site. When the vapor pressure of DEF is considered together with the conditions and method of
of application, the atmosphere is indicated to be a major loss route from the field, especially during and for several days following application. The defoliants are sprayed onto fields during warm weather so that much of the chemical is vaporized before hitting the leaves. In addition, soil and plant material blown into the air, especially during the harvest process, would provide other major loss routes to the atmosphere. Therefore, atmospheric residues can be a concern when seeking to ensure the welfare of nearby residents. However, the field results suggest that these defoliants are a small, if not negligible, threat to the health of the residents in the area, with the exception of a proper application. A prolonged period of atmospheric inversion during the defoliation represents the most likely environmental circumstance which can markedly alter ambient exposure. And in regards to paraquat, it should be stressed that the literature reports that lesions can form quickly at much lower paraquat exposure than reflected in acute or subacute toxicity measurements. Also, long-term effects of exposure to low levels of paraquat on the human body, and particularly the human lung, have not been evaluated. For example, the possibility that small quantities of paraquat could cause or aggravate asthma and emphysema-like symptoms in exposed individuals may have been overlooked in the past. Considering the analytical findings and toxicity data in the literature, it would seem prudent to advise that agricultural workers and human residences not be situated within 400 meters, that's a kilometer, downwind of paraquat spraying operations, which is in agreement with the recent EPA advisory opinion. More research is needed into the long-term effects of breathing dust contaminated with paraquat.
Which one are you referring to? The one that's here on the letter? On the letter to...
On the second page, number 1.
Okay, so
It was
you're...
just, how does this?
That's an excerpt from this study that they quoted here?
No, it was a different study. And then on the third page, when it says pesticides undergo 10 to 15 years of testing before they are approved for use, and pesticide tests are more stringent than those done on most drugs. From the minutes of the September 19th meeting of the Pesticide Registration and Evaluation Committee, Larry Nelson, Chief of Medical Toxicology Branch of the CDFA, said, at present there is no pesticide active ingredient which has an adequate and complete chronic database. And then from the American Chemical Society text said, none of the published laboratory studies on DEF involve mixtures of agents, even though the formulation used to spray DEF includes other chemicals such as the desiccant and RNA inhibitor endothol. And then from the guidance for re-registration of pesticide products containing paraquat dichloride from the draft March 1986 states, under FERPA, the Federal Insecticide, Fungicide, and Rodenticide Act, the EPA does not normally cancel or withhold registration simply because data are missing or incomplete. And then for the monitoring the food, this is from the General Accounting Office report. Pesticides need to enhance FDA's ability to protect the public from illegal residues. The FDA samples a very small, undefined portion of the domestic food supply. The FDA does not regularly test food for a large number of pesticides that can be used or may be present in food. Included among these are a number of pesticides that, according to the FDA, require continuous or periodic monitoring because they are known as potential health hazards and are likely to be used. And the FDA does not, 1, prevent the marketing of most food that it finds to contain illegal pesticide residues, and 2, penalize growers who market food with illegal pesticide residues when the FDA is unable to remove it from the market. And then that statement, pesticide has not been harmful to human health, is extremely vague. And it does not refer to if it's consumption or manufacture, because then you have the DECP sterility in the mineral workers at the Lacro California plant, or else Bhopal, India, or if it's quite a,
What you're saying, you don't agree with the plan.
right, well, that line is extremely vague and not being very specific. And then,
We've met with the ICI. They can answer these questions, what she's alluding to. Because we asked them the same questions about the vapor pressures and everything else. They do have the studies, but they have gone back to most recent studies and gone down and got that clarified. I mean, what your vapor versus the toxicity, they have that information there. We just didn't know when we wanted to bring those people in.
the last, and then there's a comment about the gypsy moth, and it says, it was declared eradicated, officially declared eradicated by the CDFA in Santa Cruz County. This is the first time that Bacillus thuringiensis, BT, a naturally occurring bacteria, has been used exclusively for an eradication program. The CDFA and its advisory panel originally favored the use of the chemical carbaryl, but local residents led by County Supervisor Spockman reported one. CDFA also declared Alameda County, where carbaryl was used, to be free of the gypsy moth. So I don't really understand where these people got this information.
So you were saying that the gypsy moth was eradicated by the virus.
By the bacteria,
Bacteria,
BT.
not by pests.
No, it can be used either way. I was just saying that it's like they only say it can be used one way. Like you have to have carbaryl. I was just bringing that up, that it could be controlled biologically as opposed to chemical.
That's where some of their information came from. I think.
Right?
Just where some of their information came from. I think.
Well, just that last one, but most of it came from all of these. No. Or even as far as when they say pesticide has not been harmful to human health, there's the, and also you make the comment, I just briefly want to say that while I have this because it applies to both. You stated that nobody has been harmed from illegal use of pesticides.
Nobody, no, I didn't say that. Nobody's ever been killed by the legal use of a pesticide.
Did you say killed or injured? Well, at any rate, this one, this was a study in the journal document by the California Department of Health Services on Omine, which was used in Tulare County, and it caused dermatitis or chemical burn on the pickers that entered the field to pick the oranges. And it says the failure of the CDFA registration process to recognize that inert ingredients could result in lower crop degradation time resulted in no additional registration requirements being requested beyond that for Omine 30W. The manufacturer was apparently aware that the product would be long-lasting, however, based upon a recent magazine advertisement describing Omine CR as having 4 to 12 weeks of residual action. Since no apparent violations of pre-harvest interval or application rate occurred, it appears that registration of Omine CR took place without sufficient consideration of the potential for inert ingredients to extend the foliar residue degradation time or otherwise alter its safety. The recommendations were that, the general recommendation is that closer attention needs to be paid to inert ingredients in the pesticide registration process.
Other comments? I'd like to refer to the second page again on the source of material. I'm kind of curious where they got some of these numbers, and if this is indeed right. I'll read it. The monitoring team detected very low levels of DEF drift from cotton fields during application. Drift levels vary from a maximum 14,500 parts per million, which calculates to mean 1.1 part per trillion by weight and volume, immediately downwind from the field, 30 meters, and 70 parts per trillion, 400 meters downwind. So are they trying to say here that the farther you get away from the drift, the higher the level goes? Or
Kind of sounded to me when I read it, exactly what you stated. I figured they'd speed up when they put it down, and misquoted.
yeah, but that doesn't
It doesn't make any
sound,
sense at all.
and I don't know how they got 14,500 parts per million to 1.1 part per trillion. That to me talks about 0.014.
Mr. Chairman, I believe we're trying to generalize or summarize a drift study here in one paragraph and criticize it on the basic paragraph rather than look at the entire study. I think the source of material here, the drift studies from aerial applications of DEF and Folex in Fresno, I believe it's supposed to be Merced County, Madera County, 1979. I have this study. It has about 50 pages in it. And rather than try to critique a generalization of that study, I believe at the last meeting, the committee expressed a desire to look at the studies rather than critique. So we're getting farther away from the actual factual data because it's been extrapolated from a study. If the committee wishes to review the complete study, the 50 pages, I could convey it to you. This, I believe, would be more accurate than
I think we should. My problem is if this coming from the grand jury tends to carry some weight, whether it's real or not, and I think it should be more factual and accurate when we put the information down.
I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong, I'm just saying we should look at the original study.
And I think this just points out to you that we have to really go over the studies and dig into them and just not take generalization of things that are written down or what someone says we go by that. We have to look into it and see what's behind it.
I will present that to the chairman. I'm not in a position to copy it.
I may be wrong. We won't 5 more minutes. Do we got this?
At least one representative from the grand jury here for our next meeting. I'd like to know who the members of this committee are. I'd like to know what they do for a living. I'd like to know who they spoke to and provided information to them. I'd like to know whether the conclusions are based on anecdotal reports. Certainly the report, if I interviewed one processor, is not statistically valid. People here have already outlined difficulties that they have with this. When I read the summary, to be honest with you, on the last page, it sounded like a PR report from industry, and I think even industry really doesn't want anything like that. People here are looking for something that is unbiased, that has some, I would describe as academic excellence to some degree in the interpretation of material, and that would be presented to the Board of Supervisors with full confidence that the results have some validity. And I don't see anything in this that leads me to any of the positive conclusions of the Board of Supervisors. And I would like to have representatives from the grand jury here to tell us how this report was gathered.
I have one question. The subject indicated it was an investigation of materials submitted to the grand jury.
That was that packet that we presented to the board.
Did it go to the board and then to the grand jury or to the
No, I
grand jury?
had delivered the packets and the ones that were out of town. But most of the ones locally were all hand delivered.
So it
They all
indicates-
got them the same day.
It indicates here that material by the grand jury was contacted and submitted to them. Of course, they being the watchdog of the county have a responsibility to respond. I believe some members did contact my office to ask more department to contact them because there are some conclusions drawn here that don't relate to just the air conditioning office. Perhaps a member of the grand jury could
I think it'd be a good idea. They devote almost 2 pages to benefits that side and how it's very wrong. Or half page.
And why did they mention the criminal history?
Valerie, did you give the grand jury anything other than this packet or any
No.
communication?
Everyone received exactly the same thing.
We listen to a lot of information that's not pertinent with what we're trying to do. I think we maybe some of the grand jury possibly would like.
I think if you write a letter and ask the grand jury to come and be sure to specify what questions we're going to ask them, so they'll send out answers.
Well, I'll tell you something. When I go to the grand jury, they never tell me ahead of time what question they're going to ask me.
I'll give them an idea. You, somebody might.
I think they have a pretty good idea. They're coming down.
Oh, what Dr. Spaulding is saying, I kind of agree with him. It's just not come down to be a party here. I'm interested in finding out just what, not only the sources of the material are, but also where they get the facts. And, you know, I don't know think makeup of the grand jury or this particular committee. Now, it seems to me they should have an idea of what we're wanting.
Trust these people back here. Give it to them.
Next week's meeting.
Oh,
Just it.
At this time, do we want to go to setting the agenda, and we can address some of these problems at the next meeting? Thank you.
I would like to review Mr. Fry's report.
Okay, so we're setting the agenda. Okay. We're
I'm
now
sorry.
setting the agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought that's what you said.
I want to see if you want to go to
Oh.
about a minute early.
Oh.
Okay, we'll now be setting the agenda for February 11th meeting. Leslie Ballard. Okay, we'll continue with 4 o'clock, the call to order. 4:05, second the minutes. 4:10, okay, do we want to have the same amount of time for the comment? Go ahead.
We'd like to see if we can change these dates sometimes, because Friday we start school and she has classes Tuesday and Thursday. Because I know a couple of things just that Wednesdays for you. It's just very, could be possible to change it. Tuesday, Thursday, Thursday.
If we're going to have to change it again, we're going to have to bring it up probably next one time to discuss it. Do we want to put this on the agenda? All those in favor? 4 o'clock, we'll have a call to order, 4:05, 60 minutes. How long for the comment period? Same 4:10 to 4:30? Okay, 4:30, how long do you think that we'll discuss? Try and call it 10 minutes. 4:30 to 4:45. Discussion. Get 4:45 on. That means we want to go in.
I did want to go over this. I'm going to ask the Department of
Okay, you want
Worker Health and Safety to send me enough, so I have a copy of this for your pages. This is that one I was talking about.
to discuss the information?
Yeah.
Okay, we can probably go, and I think we need to probably discuss this movie.
Okay.
How long, 15 minutes or something? Does that mean enough time? It's 4:45 and 5 o'clock, where we discuss some fields of beer. That'll give us another hour to go.
maybe you can ask grand jury, what's going to be here. So, no, in there.
Because we have a letter.
30 minutes, about 12 minutes.
Okay. I think we want to file, we should vote on. All those in favor, raise your hand. Half an hour, 5 minutes. That leaves us half an hour. After 15 minutes, we will set it again. So I think we got to use some of that time to start discussing some of the information that we're going to need to report. Will we see that ahead of time?
That's what I was, if I get it, I'm going to request it. I'll call tomorrow and see if we can send it. We usually send it to me.
Oh,
It's supposed to be
Put in from 5:30 to 5:15, we'll try to discuss that report and the positive risk study, and see if we want to have copies made for people to have information.
What's the time of that?
Determination of airborne residues from for harvested chemicals that are like chemicals like paraquat that treated San Joaquin Valley cotton field sites and Michigan. It's done in Dallas.
In the last 15 minutes, once again, set the agenda for the following week.
I would like to, I think because the rest of the committee hasn't really been familiar with this packet that was presented to the board and to the vendor and other respective people, I think that some of the letters in here maybe should be read maybe take out, there are 15 letters in here from various such people that showed up tonight, and I really think they should be there.
Well, the agenda is, how long will it take you to do that?
Well, unless I could make copies of them and pass them out, so everyone can be aware that there are instances out there of people who are having problems.
You can make copies of it.
Okay, I'll do that.
But there's no way we're gonna be able to discuss both these studies in 15
Yeah,
minutes.
I'll do that.
The main thing is we wanna go over the high points and then get copies made for the rest of us.
Just a question. Is it the intention of the committee to have copies available to the committee members and then discussion following it? It's pretty difficult to be able to read a study and be able to respond to a study in the same way.
We'll have to be doing it basically a week behind, discuss what we want this meeting, and the following month we will be going, probably going into that after study that.
Do all the committee members have a copy of that? Or be incumbent to have that if there's going to be any discussion?
We're still gonna have to work out who, we're gonna vote on.
Well, we'll do it. We'll do it if you tell us. I just ask that you don't give us reference books and copies. So
Because, or should I just request that?
I feel better for 41 pages if you request it, but for the letters, Sally, why don't you just pick out the ones that you think are of interest? So we'll work something out. You contact them and we'll send it out as a separate mailing before we even send out
Drop them
the
off down
agenda.
there with the meeting. Okay.
But these probably should be voted on before the next meeting.
Well, perhaps you and David maybe can get together and find out what they think is at least pertinent. We can give you a partial handout rather than photocopying 50 pages. We can photocopy 6 or 10. And if you guys just tell us which ones you want. And then if people from the committee want more beyond that point, we'll see what we can do about copying the rest of it. But we have no problem photocopying 6 or 10 pages if we send it to the board.
Then you just do it down to you.
Dave, I think it's important that you and Dr. Micken, somewhere along the line in the near future here, bring us up to date of any health problems that we might have in our local community, how many incidents of pesticide illnesses we have mandated by law to be reported to them. And I think they should incite us of how many Class 1 herbicides applications been made versus how many illnesses there is, and kind of bring us up to date in our own county. I think we're getting, we're trying to go out into the whole world here. And I don't know if we're going to have the time within 6 months to get this down to get some type of report. And another thing we're going to have to do here in the near future is for you people to come to an ag operation and to see the latest things that's happened in the last 6 months. Because we were studying, I know in your case, the study that you have there was done, how many years ago? In 1983. These things are reacted to in our environment within months versus correction procedures. And I think it's a good thing for all of us to either visit an application firm. Let's go over with you at that time. And then when we come back and we go over these studies, that you will have a more up-to-date on the problems and how we take care of them. For instance, in our movie today is our auto cars. People and right now that they're leaving here, but the attitude of the aircraft put on the auto car.
That didn't appear to me because you saw the truck car.
It's like it's a fight around.
It's not applied that way either.
Okay, well, that would be...
I think we should know what I'm saying is I don't think you've ever been to an application firm and if you take a Saturday or some of them, we'd be happy to bring you out, show you how it's done right now. Because there's a lot of these studies we're going to be going over that are already been corrected in procedures we've been using.
Okay, then bring that data in.
It's pretty hard to bring
a
a
safety sheet.
Okay,
You don't have to bring that in.
No, it's pretty. What I'm trying to say, it's pretty hard to bring an 18-ton mixer in here.
Okay, well, just like for the vaporization pressure.
Okay.
Things like that.
Okay. We need to go in with industry and bring them in here immediately, I think, and so they can bring us up to date on the latest. I think this is very mandatory. I think these people want it, you want it, and everything else. We're talking about DEF, paraquat, and FOLEX. Let's bring the people that manufactured in and have these questions and answer them. Let them answer them. If they can't answer them,
I think it'll all be pretty one-sided though.
You know that, what they're going to say is for their own best interest.
I don't know what they're going to say.
Side of track right now. I'd like to make a comment on it. Both Dr. Meehan and I are both ex-officio members, so we don't really get into the area of discussion unless, it's related to us. However, you did make some comment, some discussion about assumptions being made, not really related to Kings County. I do have data that if you have any questions related to pesticide use enforcement program in Kings County, you should request this because I'm not in a position to volunteer it unless the committee is anxious or interested in information relating to enforcement, incidents, illnesses, investigations, doctors' reports of injury in Kings County. This is public information. The committee is privy to the committee and anyone else in this room. But if you're interested in the facts, you should ask us for it.
And that's what I'm asking the board to do there. In fact, I'm going to make a motion that you make a report to us. Maybe Dr. Mick make the report to us.
Before you vote on it, can I make a comment about that? There was a lady here who commented, she thought that perhaps physicians were lax or they were in bed with industry on this, so because she didn't think they reported it. Her perception is incorrect, of course, but there's one reason for it. The problem is you can't go by the number of pesticide reported illnesses because generally physicians do not associate a set of complaints when a person comes in with pesticide unless they're very astute and unless the person specifically can tell them about that exposure. So there's a dramatic underreporting of pesticides, not because physicians don't want to, but because they're unaware of this direct relationship. So if you do end up looking at the number of reports of pesticide illness, you're not really going to get anything that I consider to be valid in terms of the scope.
As far as the regulations, I mean, I don't want these, I want to know if he is coming out and he can give a report to us, are we being regulated correctly? I mean, I'm in the business and we know from our standpoint, but I don't think the general public knows that.
Yeah, a motion has been made. Is there a second? Second. Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. The motion so carried. You want to hear the motion?
Yeah.
Okay. Read the motion. Read the motion.
Just that you and Dr. Mick can make a report on the problems that there is in Kings County, or if there is problems in Kings County.
Aerial application.
Aerial application.
Of defoliants?
You want defoliants pesticides, or you wouldn't want to keep them defoliants? I guess we're keeping them defoliants.
How many doctors know what the symptoms are? I mean, there's many things that affect the same thing, same symptoms. So it's very hard.
That's why he made that comment in that movie that it's an almost insurmountable problem because a lot of the problems associated with pesticide illness, living diseases, and there's no like spot box out there that say, yeah, definitely you were exposed to alcohol. It's very difficult.
Especially when it hasn't been actually talked to the medical people. They don't really know what they're looking for as far as looking for a pesticide illness. Loretta had been to doctor after doctor after doctor before she finally came to the conclusion that she knew something was wrong, but they couldn't find it.
I think the public awareness also, we need to do a whole lot on that because I think a lot of incidences aren't being reported because people don't know who to call, where to call, and then a lot of times look what happened to Betty, how many phone calls it took before actually somebody realized she had been sprayed, and then had been called back and said that she hadn't been sprayed, and then she said, I have witnesses who saw it, and then, so the public awareness program really needs to
That's
be.
why communities should be doing.
So I really think there are a lot of instances out there that have been reported.
Yes.
and there's a lot of people that don't go to the doctor to begin with.
But I mean, that doesn't, you know,
If they
doesn't
don't
make
go to
it
the
all
doctor,
right.
There's no report to start with. There's no investigation to be looking at the report.
When you're bringing us up to date, the general public doesn't, one of the ladies asked the question, you know, that the aircraft was flying right beside my house. We know that's all illegal. Well, you know, they're under the impression, that's illegal, and it's not illegal. You know,
It's not illegal as far as our department is concerned.
no, it's not.
It may be illegal if it's another agency.
Well, it should be.
They're afraid.
No, only if they're using certain restricted materials makes it illegal. They can fertilize, they can spray a vast number of
But as long as they're flying in a safe pattern.
material next to homes.
See, for an example, to the public here right now,
Helicopters that fly.
the use of pheromones in the movie, you know, they're putting them on by hand. We do a lot of that by air. But so if the general public would say, an aircraft would be flying by their house, they would naturally be under,
See, people are afraid.
Are afraid.
They don't know what's being.
they don't know what that's putting out, but you know, they automatically thinking that could be a toxic material, when actually you would be putting on some pheromones. Now, there's a lot of that done. Biochemically, there's a lot of that done by here, you know. So, you know, you're,
So that's why there needs to be a greater public awareness.
that's right.
But to say that aerial spraying over homes or next to homes is illegal is not.
It's not true.
Well, what if it crashes?
According to the FAA regulations, as long as they're flying in a pattern so that they can land safely on a congested area.
See, so we're starting
Like
to
in-
qualify it.
Okay, but like if,
But the blanket statement saying aerial application
Right.
next to homes.
but it needs to be clarified as, you know, with the FAA regulations and what those mean and who you report it to if you see somebody flying on it.
Carol, can you get those regulations? I think
Well, I
this
have
will be
those.
coming out of this
Okay,
call.
the ones you have, there's in an update, there's 12 updates to the article, part 91 of Article 137. Okay, I've written Denver to get these updates. We sent out the 12 copies on that for 2.5 weeks when I received them here. So the latest update, as soon as I can get them, I'll bring you up to par on those. There's 12 updates, and I don't even have the 12 updates. But, you know, the general public needs to know when and where and how we're flying and what conditions can we be in. Because as I see it now, with the people with some of the questions they were handling us, they're scared to death when they see an aircraft. No matter what it's putting out, they're scared to death.
Because they don't know.
They don't know, and I think it's to this board, somewhere along the line, that we bring this out, you know, what conditions, times, and what materials can be flying and where we can be flying them. Because there's indications, there has been problems, that our product's been shot at, actually been shot at with and this
Because they
is,
flew right over his home.
you know, and stuff like that, you know, after people understood what we're doing, and it's good for the public too, because if we're doing something wrong, they would know, hey, that's wrong. Then they could be reported to you, and then that problem could be taken care of.
How often do they have enough data?
Usually, on the regulations, usually FAA regulations, you never know on that. It could be, you know, this could be for 2 days, or it could be for 2 years. They went for several years from that
Maybe
phase.
often, because
It's very expensive.
I think we probably should want to consider that starting the next meeting, we probably start trying to schedule speakers. Where's yours?
I didn't do that.
We probably should start scheduling speakers starting with the next meeting. People here from colleges, applications, different companies. So we can have some more input other than just us.
Okay, now you've allowed me about 15 minutes on jointly with Dr. 5:30 to 5:45 to give a report. No, that's not.
No, you want it, written report,
You
not
want
a
a
written
written
report.
I think it should be in writing and down where we know. I want to know, I want everybody here to know what you're doing to govern us.
Maybe a bit back.
because I know what you're doing, but I'm not sure everybody else
Summarize
is.
in 10 pages.
Is there a motion to accept the matter? Is there a second? All those in favor? We're adjourned.